And we are live. Live, live, live.
So I should be able to log into YouTube.
Hello, everybody. The infamous War Hamster is here with us as we await. Um, where's the live? There it is. There's the live details.
Oh, that's why I'm getting echo. I forgot to mute the YouTube. We got 5 people watching already.
Yeah, they are on it and on it.
Yeah, I like getting here 15 minutes early and chatting with the
Exactly.
audience.
It's
I
fun.
think it's a good idea. Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
We should. I guess it's not. It's something we got to think about for Glitch.
And the problem with that is that I, I don't think Dan has the time. I mean, that's the end of his day. He gets up. He gets up early. He's kind of like me. He gets up early.
Yeah, his videos post pretty early in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I think he records. I want to say at like 11 o'clock in the morning. Oh, Arlene is here. Hello, Arlene. It's so good to see you. Better Human is here. Very nice. John Doe.
Starting to recognize some of these names.
Chris, Sue.
Is there a problem with Sue? Is there a problem with notifications from YouTube?
Yeah, when you say yeah, exactly, Sue. When you say notified, can you be a little bit more specific?
I don't think I have
Hello,
any live.
Kikyo.
I don't think I have any live subscriptions. Kikyo. I always wondered what that source of that name was.
Hmm. I need to post this in our chat.
You're drinking out of an invisible
Yeah,
container.
well, it's only because it's green.
That was actually pretty funny to look at.
Yeah, it's green. Well, it's kind of off green. It's like a bluish green. So
We'll have to take your word for it.
yeah, I know, right?
I got the war room on in the background, and Mike Lindell is on with Bannon. But I have muted.
We're gonna get to interview Mike Lindell in a couple weeks.
What's the date on that?
I want to say it's 11th and 12th.
Is that a Friday, Saturday, right?
I believe that's correct.
I know. Yeah, it's got to be. He always does Friday, Saturday shows.
Yeah, because they're at churches where he can't. He doesn't want to.
Yeah, they're at churches. Half of his guests probably need to work on Sundays.
Or they want to go to church.
Well, a lot of them, what do you figure? A good percentage of his speakers are preachers or pastors or what have you.
No. I did get a notice from YouTube and Patriot Street Fighter. Yes, so I put it on Patriot Street Fighter. YouTube doesn't. Okay. Yeah, if you guys follow Patriot Street Fighter on Telegram, I post the link every day or every generally the day of about an hour before. Hello, Tracy. And no, it's the weather over in Norco is dark, huh? I guess it's heading my direction.
Yeah, we got it yesterday afternoon. It was yesterday morning around noontime. It was still 75 degrees at the coast, and then just this wall of fog came in. It's been freezing ever since. So Better Human, I like watching it on RSBN, but I sometimes switch it up with what's the other channel I watch it on? Real America's Voice.
Mhm. Did you see that thing I posted a few minutes ago? Wow, actually, it was earlier, where Zelensky Zelensky said that Russia's invading on the 16th.
No, I didn't see you posted.
Yeah,
Is that in text?
it was from the last refuge. Um, Zelensky's a good guy. I think Zelensky was he was the populist president. So
Was that the former comedian?
yes, he was the former comedian who played the president on Ukrainian television, and he won the election. And he was like good friends. He and Trump hit it off really well. What's up there, Chris and Colt?
And Montalbano is here. What's up, buddy?
Oh,
I'll be right back. I forgot to get my pocket constitution.
okay.
20 seconds.
Never go anywhere without your pocket constitution, ever. I have it in my briefcase. I have actually several. Actually, I'm not sure I would agree with that. I don't know if you guys saw the video clip of Putin saying that he was well aware that NATO outclassed Russia in terms of military capabilities, but Russia outclassed NATO in nuclear capabilities. And if NATO wanted to come in, if they wanted to come in and make Ukraine a NATO country and try to take over Crimea, that Russia would essentially be forced to respond with nuclear weapons. So I don't know if you guys saw that clip.
I did. And, it's funny talking about the nuclear arsenal outclassing America's. I remember part of the Cold War lures, once the USSR broke up, apparently a lot of their nukes didn't work. I mean, it's been 30 years. I'm sure they've improved them, but I mean, are we sure that they're actually outclass us? I don't think I'd take that one on faith.
That Colt, I agree with. I agree with.
Yeah, NATO's been in the business. They basically are part of America's foreign policy, and we basically have been fighting wars of adventurism for commercial purposes for more than a century. It does not make us the good guys.
Well, if you really, a lot of you guys probably don't understand, and I mean no disrespect, but the history and the backstory of who's in charge and who's pulling strings and whatnot. Warhamster and I, we we go hours and hours and hours talking about this kind of stuff behind the scenes. we actually we I said to Warhamster last night. I said, we should just record our conversations and just upload them for the world to see or hear.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do that live with our conversations. We might have to do a little bit of editing.
Exactly.
we do go to some pretty dark corners.
We do, but we have the intellectual integrity and honesty to and to maybe step out of bounds a little bit, just to kind of push the envelope. But yes, UN is control. Ugh, UN. I cannot wait for the United Nations to be to no longer exist.
It's got to go the way of the League of Nations.
Well, the League of Nations was weak. I don't, if I remember correctly, the United States was never really involved in the league. They weren't in the League of Nations.
No, there's something like that's
I don't
my memory.
I don't believe the United States ever signed on with the League of Nations. It was a weak. It was very, very weak. Anyway, but the I mean, the United Nations, not so much. Yes, exactly, Sue. That would be fantastic. Actually, I don't know. I wouldn't really like it if we droned it. I think it would be a lot more fun to actually go in there and just set the charges and watch it demolish on its own in its own footprint. I think that would be a lot more fun. Make it a pay-per-view event.
Ron, have we ever talked about the blue helmets and their very, very poor track record of human trafficking, child
I
molestation?
don't think we should be doing that on this channel. With
Probably
being
a
YouTube,
good call. Okay, fair enough. There's a
I don't want
that's
this channel to be destroyed because of things that we because we say so because the ears are everywhere.
so I need to apply my filter on Tuesdays.
Yes.
It's not easy for me to do.
Yes, Colt, I have heard Kid Brock's new song. It's very good.
Yeah, I liked it too. It's good.
My invisible drink. It makes me invisible. It's not that YouTube can't handle the truth. YouTube doesn't want the truth exposed because that means that YouTube will be, well, YouTube is essentially the intelligence community.
I can buy that argument.
Yeah. YouTube, well, I mean, all of it. I mean, YouTube, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, it's all intelligence community, all developed and created by DARPA, all for the purposes of the people just willingly putting all their information in so that it could be sucked up and sponged up by intelligence. I mean, why do you think why do you think apps? Everybody wants you to use your app. Oh, sign in for the app. Do this with your app. The apps are the ones that are spying on everybody. The apps on your phones are spying on everybody. That's Maddie.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think YouTube was not a DARPA creation. They were created by somebody else, and then when they grew, Google just bought them out. So they brought them into the fold.
Could be.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was founded by the government.
Yeah, it's going to be True Social is going to be good
if they execute. You know, we've had.
I don't think it's. I don't think it's going to have a problem with execution if Mr. T is the one pulling the strings on that and making sure that it gets done. He will put the right people in place.
He does not have a technology background, so if he gets the right people in place, but wasn't the person isn't that Mark Meadows doing that? And he's also not a technology guy. So,
well, yeah, but you don't necessarily need to be a technology guy to have the skill set of putting the right people in place and overseeing it.
Hey, you got another San Diegan here, DK. San Diego representing.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, I reside in San Diego as well.
You're in San Diego area.
It's actually city of San Diego. I'm inside the city limits.
Are you really?
Yeah, it's the city limits go all the way. I think they go. Now I'm definitely in San Diego County. I'm trying to remember where the city limits are.
You're absolutely in San Diego County, but I didn't think that you were in San Diego city limits.
So right where we are is there's a crossover point where North County Sheriff take over and San Diego Police stop, and it's one of the streets very near me.
Zuckerberg did not create Facebook. That is a little bald-faced lie.
Well, D, we have our live Constitution class in Carlsbad every Thursday with Doug and just Doug. I'm there every week, but I'm in the Peanut Gallery on Thursdays, except for when Doug's out of town, in which case I occasionally teach a class.
Cole, did you tell us where you were before? Forgive me. You did, and I forgot.
You said Santa Clarita right above.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I helped open a restaurant up there once upon a
Oh,
time
I
long
see it. I
ago.
see it. Duh. D's asking where on Thursday.
Go to 1776foreverfree.com. That's Dr. Cordy Williams' page for his nonprofit. And on there, you hit the learn button, and it shows you where the classes are. But we have the meetings at his office, and it's a good time. We group of us gets together at the Yard House beforehand, around 4:30, and then we sometimes go out for a drink afterwards. It's a really, really fun, close knit group. I'm on
I
a
would.
text thread.
I'd like to come down there for that. I've wanted to, but I've met a few of the people, but it's just it's difficult for me because it's about an hour and a half. And Santa Clarita is a fantastic little city, Colt. You're absolutely correct. I've been through there many times.
I'll tell you one thing: it's clean. It's one of the cleaner cities in Southern Cal.
Yeah, it's gorgeous up there. And I
Yeah, you
think I
should
said
do it.
I think I said hello, Monica. But if I didn't, if I did, then I'm saying it again. And the cowboy is in town, or the cowboy is in the house.
Oh, great news! Thanks, conservative cowboy. I'm gonna call you CC. Nah, just cowboy. Ron, you should just drive down with Doug on Thursdays.
No, dude. No.
Why not?
Because that's way past my bedtime.
Oh,
I would get home at midnight, and then my entire week would be destroyed.
Chris is asking me what happened with the Zoom. There was a password problem that I was trying to get sorted out 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Hatchet,
and,
hello. Sorry.
So they a mistake was made. I'm not going to point any fingers.
In Florida, Arlene? In Florida?
Great deal. Look forward to seeing you. Make sure you come say hi. Introduce yourself to me. And Doug, of course. Always like to see our in-person Constitution class.
And there he is.
grow.
He's here, and he's kind of invisible.
I don't know why. The light's good.
You're it's the you have to adjust the blue or the green tone. You have to adjust the green tone.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, you want to put your poll up?
Oh yeah, it's a good call. Good call. Good call.
I was going to start a betting thread in here and see whether Doug would arrive before 3:00 p.m. or after. We got here at 3:01 today, Doug.
Well, you do know I do other things.
Hey, that's good. It worked. See, you did really good there.
Yeah, all I did was switch cameras.
There you go. The camera makes a big deal. So everybody, I put it in the poll. I put this poll up every week. Are you new here? I ask everybody to participate so that we can get an idea of if we have, for new people. So anyway, how you doing there, Mr. Doug? Are we having a better day today than we did last week?
Never. But I did have to do something I rarely have to do in California. Wipe the raindrops off of my glasses.
I know. There's this foreign substance called water falling from the sky.
Yeah, we get between 7 and 14 inches a year in Southern California.
Have you ever heard Jim Rome's spiel on when the first raindrop hits the windshield and people start to panic?
Yeah, they drive like idiots.
They have no idea what to do.
They already drive like idiots, but the water just makes it worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, I learned how to drive up in Oregon, and we're pretty good drivers in the rain because you don't have a choice.
Yeah, it only rains twice. I heard it only rains twice a year in Oregon, September.
For 6 yep.
So, September to January and February to August.
Yeah, you go visit Oregon in the springtime, and it's one of the most beautiful places you've ever seen. All the green and everything, and that's what my parents did when I was a kid, and they fell in love with the place, and it was pretty neat for the first summer, and then the first rainy winter hit, and we learned the hard way.
I have a place in Brookings on the southern end of the coast, and it's the area in Oregon gets the least amount of rain along most of Oregon. It's known as the Sun Belt or the Banana Belt. I'm sorry, of Oregon is what Brookings is known as. It only gets 89 inches a year.
Hey, Luke, you can see through me.
All right, so enough of your insolence as visitors. Hi, everybody. I'm Douglas V. Gibbs. Mr. Constitution. You know, there is another Mr. Constitution actually up there in Grants Pass, Oregon area. He used to live out here in the Paris area, and about time he left for Oregon and stopped doing Constitution classes in Lake Matthews, Paris, was about time I started my classes in Temecula. It's kind of funny how that worked out. He and I have been in touch with the last few weeks. He found me on AM radio on the KMET 1490 AM show, Constitution Radio. And he's been going by the name Mr. Constitution since the 90s. So I asked him, I said, is that a problem? I mean, you know, because I don't want to get into a copyright issue. He says, no, I wish there was someone in every county that went by Mr. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, funny thing about constitutionalists and people who agree with the Constitution, they tend to be easier to work with. All right. Just saying.
Well, we're ready.
I'm ready.
Gibbs.
All
let's
right.
Go.
So
let's
we left
start.
off
Let's
in Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8. We were talking about the military.
The Navy. We're going to talk about the Navy.
Well, we did talk about it a little bit, but we didn't really finish.
No. As a former sailor myself, as well as you, I would love to finish talking about the Navy.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do, my wonderful audience there is I have 6 live classes I do and 3 online things that I do with the Constitution. And so I have a pocket Constitution for each one with a label on them. And this one it says Scott McKay on my label. Because this is the Patriot Street Fighter version, and we're going through the Constitution here. And I mark off where I left off, and I have to do this because with 9 different possibilities, it's easy to forget which one I left off where because they're not all in sync with each other. And so last Thursday night, Warhamster walks up to me and says, "Hey, you know, you're in the wrong part of the Constitution. And I'm like looking at my Carlsbad version. I'm like, no, that's where I marked off. And then he realized what he thought I left off in Carlsbad is where I left off here. He got the 2 confused. So I'm like, you know, now you have trouble keeping 2 apart, Warhamster. Imagine me with like 9.
Well,
so,
I get it.
All right.
I get it. In all fairness, in all fairness, we did get you starting the wrong section once about 6 months ago.
And this is true. This is true, which is one of the reasons I started marking my pocket constitutions. All right. So welcome, everybody. For those of you who have not been here before, we are working our way through the Constitution. You will learn something every time. I am telling you the way it should be based on the original intent, the original language. And when I say the original language, the words haven't changed. Our language has. And so sometimes things get a little confusing, whatnot. Also, there's some concepts we've been lied to about. So I may talk about something and it's not going to quite make sense to you because you've been lied to. That's okay. Bear with me. You'll get there. Appreciate you being here. Stay with me through the entire Constitution. When we get to the end, we'll start over again. And so if you want to catch past episodes, wonderful thing about this is we have a YouTube page here that you're watching on. You can go back to the old shows, the old videos. So you'll never really get lost. Thanks for being here. Really do appreciate having you. All right. So, and yes, I might be in California, but Colt Brownie says, might be in California, but I know my guns. You know, it's so bad here in California that even the liberals in other states call it California. But anyway, all right. So where we left off, remember in Article 1, Section 8, each of these clauses begin with the word to. In the very first clause, it says the Congress shall have the power or have power to. Congress shall have power is the assumed beginning here. They just didn't want to write it over and over and over. So often you'll hear me read it that way. It's not that you're missing words in your Constitution. I'm just adding the Congress shall have power so that it makes better sense when I read it. So we talked about last week the military a little bit, but we didn't get real deep. So Congress should have power to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. And Congress shall have the power to provide and maintain a navy. Once again, we talked about this last week. Notice there's a difference. The Army requires every 2 years a renewal of the appropriation of funds. The money must be approved every 2 years to keep the Army, to fund it. But when it comes to the Navy, it just says to provide and maintain a Navy. Now, sailors like myself and Ron like to say that's just proof in the Constitution the Navy is the most important of all of the military services. Army guys usually don't agree. Marines usually agree because they know they get their paycheck from the Department of the Navy. So I have a friend of mine who was in the Marine Corps. He got his first paycheck, said Department of the Navy. He thought there was a mistake. But anyway, now there's a reason for this. There's a reason why only 2 years for the Army and indefinite. It's always funded no matter what it shall be. It's mandatory for the Navy. And the reason why is because, first of all, the founding fathers and the people of that time period, they were scared to death of a standing army being used against the people. Well, and when you look at tyrannies in history, is that not what happens? The tyrants use the very military that's supposed to protect the country against the country. You know, the Roman soldiers were used against the Roman people eventually. The German army, when it came to Nazi Germany, the Russian army, or at least the ones that were going to be working with the Bolsheviks, the rest of them were killed. And so you usually have a standing army being used against the people. So the framers, granted the modern army problems weren't in existence yet, but they look back in history and they were worried about a standing army being used against the people. And they went through it with the British, with the Redcoats. And so they wanted to make sure that if that army became something that would be used against the people, they could limit that possibility. Now, remember, we have two houses of Congress, House of Representatives and the United States Senate. House of Representatives has always been populated the same way throughout history, or at least since 1787. 1789, really. And that is that the people vote in the members of the House of Representatives directly, democratically, based on, and each state has a number of representatives based on its population. That makes the House of Representatives literally the direct voice of the people when it comes to the lawmaking process. The United States Senate was populated in a different way. Ever since or prior to the 17th Amendment, prior to 1913, the state legislatures elected the members of the U.S. Senate. In other words, they appointed them. It was an election by the members of the state legislature, as known as both houses, all the legislature. And so these people in the U.S. Senate, they represented the voice of the states. They were the oversight over the lawmaking process that the state legislatures put in place. So you have the voice of the people in the House, the voice of the states in the Senate. And if we go to Article 1, Section 7, which we talked about a few weeks ago, the House of Representatives has the power of the purse strings. Anything that has to do with money has to originate in the House of Representatives. So if you've got a worry about a standing army and it must be funded every 2 years, what that means is the people are given the opportunity through the House of Representatives to defund the army if they are nervous about it, if they believe it's becoming a standing army. No money, no army. So this is a way to make sure that the people have a voice. Conservative cowboy, nice. Navy is our Marines taxi cab. Yeah, well, you know what I learned about Marines when I was on my LST? That Marines basically out to sea, eat, sleep, shit, puke, and PT. All right, now back to what I say. So yeah, you're lucky you're part of the Navy because that means you're important. But anyway, yeah, I better not get into the military fun here because the rest of the audience is going to be like, oh, get back to the Constitution. All right. So anyway, so we have an army that we're worried about, standing army. So every 2 years, the people have the opportunity to either fund it or defund it. Then the process starts with the House, then it goes over the Senate. They can agree or disagree. and then to the president for a signature, and then the funding goes through. So, but it starts with the House, the voice of the people. Okay, now Navy. Well, as I mentioned last week, one of the worries is not they weren't nervous about a standing Navy because, first of all, you can't stand on water, but a standing Navy is necessary. It's not going to be used against the people. No one's ever worried about a bunch of sailors coming into town and running the place, except for maybe the bar. Yeah. Yeah. Don't mess with a sailor and his drink. But anyway, and the Navy was more than just a military service, and it still is more than just a military service. It is needed not only for military issues in the sense of war, defense, and battles, but also to ensure that our trade lanes in the ocean, because remember, the rest of the world, especially back then, is on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And so our connection to the rest of the world is that ocean. And if we've got a problem where our vessels are being attacked, our trade routes are being interrupted or something like that, we need to be able to keep those trade routes open. We need to be able to keep our connection to the rest of the world open. It's not that we necessarily wanted to be in a goose step with the rest of the world. I mean, we separated ourselves when it came to the monetary system, or at least in the beginning, legal system and all that. But still, we are in the world. We need to, have that relationship with other countries, and the other countries were on the other side of the ocean. So we need the Navy to keep all of those routes opened up. Very important service. Now, that all said, squids can be
D-Dog is on the house.
Colt Browning, only Marines and other sailors are allowed to call sailors squids.
Yeah, D-Dog is in the house, and D-Dog is a former Marine as well.
Yeah, well, here's a friend of mine, Harry, he and I, whenever we got together, I always did the driving. He was in the Marine Corps. I always thought that was hilarious. I was always the one driving. I don't even know what the inside of his car looks like. But I bet you if he needed it towed, I'd be the one to tow it.
Well, anyway. And that's another reason why you see the major institutions at the military. Why, for example, intelligence. That's why naval intelligence is such a big deal, because, again, and that's why the Marines are part of the Navy. You don't have to that's why the Marines guard the embassies. They never have to worry about being reauthorized.
Yeah, they also guard the pearly gates. They don't have to be reauthorized.
Yes, they do.
I mean, who else would you trust the pearly gates other than the United States Marines? Come on.
Hey, Doug, I got a question for you.
But no, I absolutely love my Marines. Absolutely adore my Marines. But I got in the Navy for a reason. All right, so we've got Army, we got Navy mentioned in the Constitution. Marine Corps falls under the Department of the Navy. But what about the Air Force and the Space Force? Let me ask a question. Are they constitutional, Ron?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know I don't know the constitutionality of the Air Force. I know at one time it was the USAAF, United States Army Air Force.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my grandfather in World War II was part of the Army Air Corps.
Mm-hmm. And it was USAAC rather than it was the USAAF, and then it became the USAF.
Right, United States Air Force. Air Force did used to fall under the Department of the Army. My grandfather said he was around the Army WACs, that would be the women Army Corps, and then he said because he got to get be on a ship, get shipped over there. He was around some Navy women also, so he said which were called waves. Mm-hmm. So he said he had wax in his ears and waves in his hair. But anyway, he was a part of the Army Air Corps. But it's separated. Now here's the thing: if you want to get technical, no, they're not constitutional because there needs to be an amendment saying that the federal government has the authority to have an Air Force, an authority to have a Space Force. Now, that said, the military is implied to be under the federal government. So we'll be told, well, it's constitutional because, they run the other military services, so the Constitution implies it. Well, if it implies it and doesn't have to get amendments, then does that mean that the federal government can just create as many military forces they want? No stop, right? Boy, well, you wouldn't be nervous, would you? They did that.
Yeah, the government would never take advantage of that.
Oh, yeah, no, you can trust them.
Canada,
Ron, you got something to say in between the laughs?
I'm just laughing at one of the comments. I don't want to say it out loud.
Well, Colt Browning says United States Air Force and United States Space Force wasn't even a thought in the 1700s.
Yeah, look below that.
Life is good when you okay. Devil Dog. I disagree. I appreciated the Air Force women more. All right. Anyway. Hey, I was on a base in Pensacola when I went to crypto school, man, and all the services were there, and I learned immediately. The Air Force ladies, sorry, ladies, for us being guys. So we're acting like guys right now, and I apologize. Okay.
Question in the chat. Question in the chat first, Doug.
All right, so we've talked about the military, or as Eisenhower likes to call it, the military-industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that'd get an interesting look out of Ron. I can't tell with Warhamster. He won't give me any looks. He just keeps pointing his rifle at me with his fuzzy little face. You're not medicated, right, Ron?
No, I'm not medicated. I would probably. I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep very.
Got him just laughing away.
No, I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm probably a little delirious.
What about the militia? What is the difference between the militia and the military? Because next it says to make rules. Let me go below that. To provide for calling forth the militia. So we have a military and we have a militia. What's the difference? The militia is your local citizen soldiers. These are the members of your state militia. And according to the U.S. Code, I'm not sure if I want to designate such, but according to the U.S. Code, the National Guard, the Air Guard, the Naval Militia, and so on and so forth. But also the militia goes beyond that. George Mason, after the Bill of Rights was put into place, was asked, George Mason being, by the way, one of the attendees or delegates at the Constitutional Convention, and when it came time to sign it on September 17th, he would not sign the document because he was bothered by the fact that it, A, did not outlaw slavery, and B, it didn't have a Bill of Rights. So George Mason became a very important part of the anti-federalist movement, saying, hey, we don't want the Constitution until we get a Bill of Rights. And he pushed for the Bill of Rights. And once the Bill of Rights was in place, and the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights being the right to keep and bear arms, he was asked, because it begins a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. And so he was asked, who's the militia? And George Mason responded, the whole of the people and a few politicians.
Nice.
The whole of the people and a few politicians. So in the U.S. Code, there is actually a designation between the organized militia and the unorganized militia. The organized militia being those that I just mentioned earlier. You have your Air Guard and your National Guard and your state militia and so on and so forth. And then the unorganized militia. Hey, chat room, who's the unorganized militia? That's right. It's you guys. So even the U.S. Code admits there is an unorganized militia. So now it says to provide and maintain Navy, to make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. The UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is the constitution of our land and naval forces. The militia partially falls under also the UCMJ, but they have something else they fall under as well, and we'll get to that. So the UCMJ is the military constitution. And as much as I hate to say this on some issues, Congress has the authority to determine what the military rules must be. Now, in a way, that's good. You know, I'm glad I kind of didn't fall under the Constitution. Could you imagine someone going to boot camp and say, wait a second, the First Amendment right of freedom of speech, what's going on here? Not going to work. You don't have freedom of speech when you're in boot camp. You have the UCMJ that says, guess what? You can be broken down, torn down, and then built back up again the way they want you. That's part of the reason why we have one of the greatest fighting forces in the world is because of the training.
Doug?
Now, that said,
Doug?
it's a nerve-wracking rule when you think about the vaccine situation. Oh, did I say that word out loud? That VAXX situation.
Yeah.
And hopefully we keep our show for this.
Doug, you haven't seen the recent military training and the changes that have been made to the military training as a result of the woke attitude.
Yeah, I've been hearing it's bad.
People can take a timeout. I am taking.
Those are the what are they called? Blue cards or something like that?
Yellow cards or something, whatever.
Yeah. Well, also deployment is no longer 6 months. Now it's 9 months.
Is it?
Oh yeah. I was talking to someone the other day about that.
For at sea?
Yep. Deployment's now 9 months.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What's
so
the logic?
Like, wow, that's a
what's
long time to be out there floating around.
Yeah, sure is.
What's the logic behind that?
I think it's
more under control, I guess, is the logic behind that.
No, I think really what that probably has more to do with readiness, operational readiness, because if you've got a force that's operational ready, you leave it on station for another 3 months, and it's just a whole lot easier to maintain an operational ready force than it is to replace it.
This is true.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we're on the downswing again when it comes to size, so you got to make what you have work harder.
Right.
Okay. Now, there are other rules for the militia, though, that's separate from the military. And what's interesting about this is the founding fathers tied into the Second Amendment before the Second Amendment existed. Let me explain. First words of the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. A well-regulated militia, if we go back to the word regulated, and we talked about this on the Commerce Clause, is the word regulated was not meant to mean to control or restrict through law. It was meant to mean
put in good order.
So a well-regulated militia is not a militia that's controlled or restricted by law or by the government. It is a militia that is in good order. So the word regulate comes from the same root or foundation as the word regular. So to regulate would be to make regular, another way of saying it, or to put in good order. So you've got this idea that you want the militia to be in good order, and that makes sense because during the American Revolution, the militia was anything but in good order. Now, when it comes to the militia during the American Revolution, many of them didn't have socks. They couldn't march. They, for the most part, didn't have uniforms. And guess what? Most of them are really bad shots. And so to put the militia in good order, you need rules for training, for equipment, make sure they're properly armed, and so on and so forth. That make the supply chain is good when it comes to when they're out and about and so on and so forth. So who's going to create that? So back to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. Congress shall have the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining. The organizing part would be the training and all that jazz, and bring them together and bring people on board, all that jazz. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. So, in other words, when they're called in the actual service of the United States, then also Congress will have the rules for how they're going to govern the state militia when they're employed in the service of the United States. When they're not, then that's up to the state. Reserving to the states, respectively, the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So how do you make a well-regulated militia? Congress provides the training, the rules, all that, but it's up to the states to apply it and do the work, because really the militia belongs to the state. But the rules, in other words, the training and discipline and all that is established by Congress. So while the UCMJ does apply to the militia to a point, they also have their own set of separate rules. Am I wiping you out there, Ron?
No, I as I was telling
The
I'm a little.
medication wore off?
No, I'm a little delirious today. I didn't sleep real well last night, so that's why I'm a little probably giddy but I'm just tired. So
Okay.
yeah,
See, I slept real well. I
you're
got a
not
lot of
boring
sleep
me.
last night. I got
You're
5.5 hours.
you're not boring me. Yeah, I probably got maybe 2. I'm dragging today.
So we know what he's doing after the show, right, folks?
Taking a nap, absolutely.
And folks, for those of you who are younger than I am, here's what you're going to discover as you get older. You thank God that he invented naps.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, so let's continue. So we've got this militia now that's going to be governed by these set of rules, but the state is going to apply them. Well, now you've got this situation, though. Who's really in charge, the governor or the president? I get that all the time. Well, we'll bounce over to Article 2 real quick. In Article 2, I want to say it's Section 2. Yeah. Article 2, Section 2, very first sentence. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. So when the militia is called into the actual service of the United States by Congress, remember that one earlier I talked about Congress calling forth the militia, then the president becomes the commander-in-chief. When the president is not commander-in-chief, in other words, when the militia is not called forth to be in the actual service of the United States, then the governor is the commander-in-chief. Now, did you notice in here, it doesn't say anything about the legislature being commander-in-chief. I bring that up for a reason. See, the legislature can call the militia into the actual service, but the deployment or the orders for that unit or those units come from the president. So now I just hearken back to January of 2021 when the National Guard was called to the Washington, D.C. by Pelosi and gang in the legislature, right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
How is it they could tell them what to do, though, if they're not the commander-in-chief? They can call forth the militia, but President Trump was still commander-in-chief. So in other words, they could call forth the militia, but from a legal standpoint, they couldn't do anything until the president deployed them or gave them their orders. He's the commander-in-chief, or at least the executive branch. And that's not what happened. Since when is Nancy Pelosi president of the United States?
Doug, I got a question.
Sure.
What happens in a hypothetical scenario where the president calls up the militia and the governor does it at the same time? Whose orders?
Well, first of all, the
supersedes the other?
president or the governor is not calling them up. It's going to be the state legislature or Congress.
Okay, so let's say, for example, let's say in Texas, Abbott wants to deploy the National Guard at the border.
Okay, so he talks to his legislature. They say, yeah, we'll bring them up. And at the same time, Congress brings that one up because the president wants to use them at the exact same time. In that case, normally what would happen in that case is the state would take precedent because it's their militia first. However, there should be discussions. There should be, they should work together. But that was back when they had sacred honor. But the states they belong to the states first.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no such thing as sacred honor now.
No such thing. No, they don't even know what honor is, much less sacred honor.
Exactly. Hey, well said.
Yeah. And as for the Patriot Act being set up to attack the Patriots, I was bothered by the fact that the Patriot Act was written because we already had one. It's called the Second Amendment.
Exactly.
I guarantee you, if everybody was carrying, we wouldn't have any problem with terrorists.
Well, as Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. But the problem is that all the crises are created by those who want to use the crises for their political outcomes.
Well, when it comes to my viewpoint as a Christian, everything comes out of one of two places. It's either godly or it's not. And if it's not godly, we know where it's coming from. And guess what? That direction is the direction of liars and deceivers and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny how the left lies, deceives, so on and so forth. Funny how they got those same attributes as that, other side of the Christian coin. But anyway, all right, let's continue. Now, this next part's very important. It's going to bring up a topic that I'm sure is going to create a stir, and it has in the past. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this, but I want you to make sure you understand. I want to make sure you understand all the details here. The next clause reads, the Congress shall have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States. We're talking about Washington, D.C. It had not become the seat of government yet. So notice it's kind of a future tense kind of writing here. But it's saying that once it's in existence, it's a federal district, and Congress shall exercise exclusive legislation. They will have all of the legislative powers over the district. By cession of particular states, okay, so Maryland and Virginia is going to cede some property. It means give it. They don't expect payment or anything like that. They're saying here, you have, now if you're giving away land for free, and I know a part of the reason why this site was chosen is because it was near Mount Vernon and all that. But if you're a state and you got to give away land to a new federal government, are you going to give them good stuff? Probably not. It turns out the Washington, D.C. is on some very soft land.
It is a swamp.
It literally is a swamp practically. And John Adams hated Washington, D.C. He called it a swamp that was infested with bloodsuckers. He meant the mosquitoes. And there's even word, I've never confirmed this, but I've heard someone say this before, that from a geological standpoint, the Washington, D.C. is actually sinking. I wouldn't be surprised. But nonetheless, so we've got Washington, D.C. has been created. It's a federal district, and the Congress is going to exercise exclusive legislation, and it is going to serve as the seat of government. If you look back at the definitions of the time, a seat of government does not include resident populations. A seat of government is for the purpose of governance. Now, they did, Jefferson believe that it would also become a commercial center, but nonetheless, it was not supposed to be originally any residence, temporary residency in the sense of your Congress critters showing up and leaving, and they'll be there for, their temporary stay, but no permanent residency was expected to be there in Washington, D.C., this district. And Congress has the authority to exercise exclusive legislation. Now,
so then why are there permanent residents in Washington, D.C.? I mean, I know
Washington, D.C. did something that was very interesting. It abolished slavery, and it did so before Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Kentucky. So you've got this itty-bitty little 10 by 10 square in the middle of a bunch of slave states. And if you're a slave escaping in the north and you come across Washington, D.C., are you going any further?
Probably not. That is your oasis.
You are in a safe zone. Now, that said, you're not supposed to be a resident there. But do you think the politicians who would really like to pay people to wait their tables, make their beds, and shine their shoes, do you think they're going to complain? Of course not. The newly escaped slaves happy. They've got a place to be where slavery is abolished, and they've got a job because the politicians there want their services and they need to make money. It all works out nicely. So yes, Washington, D.C. has always had a black population. It began with these escaped slaves, but they're not supposed to be residents there. And as the population grew, it began to spill over outside the edges of Washington, D.C. into the towns of Georgetown and the town of Washington. And you had this huge population. And after the war between the states, now all these people are emancipated, but they don't want to leave. This is their home. What do? Well, you need to give the area the allowance to have a resident population, and you want them to be able to, take care of themselves, to sustain politically their own business, to have a city council or something like that, a local government, so that they have a voice over their local issues rather than Congress determining everything, as is indicated right here in Article 1, Section 8. So what Congress did is now this is where it gets sticky, and I want to. By the way, Colt Browning, I do have the Act of 1871. It is online. I do have access to it, but at the moment, I'm not able to go looking for it and put it in the chat. So shoot me an email at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, and I'll shoot you the link. Now, what Colt Browning brought up is the Act of 1871. The Act of 1871 was for the purpose of giving Washington, D.C. that government, be able to allow those people to be residents and to have a say in their own governance. When you do that to a city, when you give it its ability to have its own government, the term for that is you give it a municipal corporation. It becomes an incorporated city. And that's what the Act of 1871 was for. And Warhamster, thanks for jumping on that. Very good. Save me now the work. So the question is now, was that Act of 1871 anything else? My answer is no. I know there's ideas out there that are floating around, and based on the language of the Act of 1871, which I've gone through many times, and based on the authorities that Congress had, no. And even if it is something beyond that, as the incorporating of the U.S. government, as Darren Hatchett decided to put in the chat room, they don't have that authority. So even if they tried to do that, it's not legal. So I do not accept that definition, and I've gone through a number of shows where I've explained it. I'm not going to get into the weeds here and spend too much time on it, but I didn't want to bring it up because I know it's an issue with a lot of people.
Yeah, so just FYI for the guys that are the 1871 people, there are a lot of people who are going to disagree with Doug's take on Act of 1871, and we're going to have to just politely agree to disagree and move forward.
And move on. Well, I've done a number of shows regarding it, and so if you look online, you'll find them. I've done it on Constitution Radio, For the Republic on Patriot Soapbox. I think even you and I did something about that one time.
We talked about it, and
Yeah.
I still lean on. I'm actually probably a little bit more in Darren's corner still, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We can, yeah.
Yeah,
And Warhamster, while not in full disagreement, seems to lean in my direction because he can't prove it's not true or that it is true. Do I have that correct, Warhamster?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's an important topic, to bring up periodically, because there is a big group of people that are believers that the 1871 corporation did a lot of very major things, and it leads into these sovereign citizen type things, and a lot of American citizens have basically tried to declare themselves a sovereign citizen based on some of that teaching, and they end up in jail. So it's just a tread with caution when you're going down that rabbit trail.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when it comes to sovereign citizens, I recognize it is a thing, and that it does exist, and you can make yourself a sovereign citizen. The concept is basically the same as if you were your own country, such as a tribe of the native population. They are a sovereign state within the sovereign country of the United States, and they are completely sovereign, and they are outside the full governance of the United States, although they do have a relationship with the federal government. That is their relationship when it comes to the United States. So the basic foundational concept is a good one. The problem is you've got a federal government that's not necessarily willing to play nice when it comes to that. So there's that too. Personally, I also am not a fan of the sovereign movement because I don't believe the best way to stop a runaway vehicle is to jump on the outside and become a target. I think it's to stay on the inside and apply the brakes. American national is the term that Devil Dog uses. This is the idea that you became a national with the 14th Amendment, that citizenship changed with the 14th Amendment. Yes and no. The United States did go through the change of, we went from the United States are to the United States is. And so we really did become more of a national government at that time, even though technically it's unconstitutional. So I'm going to stop right there before I get into too many weeds here, but that's the basic concepts. If you have questions, I'm willing to do a special show after we finish the Constitution, maybe about it again, where we'll field some of these questions. But I'd really like to finish up because we got one more.
We've been on Article 1.
I've got about 15 minutes to go through them.
Yeah, we've been on Article 1, Section 8 for like, what, 5 weeks now?
It takes a while. Well, see, the early part of the Constitution, Article 1, takes forever to get through. And then once you start getting past that, then things start moving. And by the time you get into the amendments, I mean, and at the end, I'll go through like 4 or 5 amendments in one class. But it does take time to trudge through this because there's a lot of information, a lot of important information in here. All right, let's continue. So I'm going to reread what I read because I want you to get the proper context. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. What that is saying is when it comes to, excuse me, let me take a swig of water here.
What? No Dr. Pepper?
Oh, there's one here, but I haven't opened it.
Okay.
Because right now, my throat is screaming for water.
Making sure you're feeling okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, if I start drinking water, people think there's something wrong with me. I do drink water. I go through 3 or 4 bottles a day, thank you. Okay. Not bottles that big, but yeah. But he has to drink that much more water because of, to dilute all the Jack Daniels Jim Beam. How dare I say something other than Jim Beam? But
got me a new bottle.
Of course, you got to dilute it with all that water, so then it doesn't rot everything inside.
I don't need any Jim Beam today.
Where's the screwball, Ron?
It's actually in my room.
Should be in the freezer, now, by the way. It tastes
what
better
I just read before we started getting into a liquid discussion is that there are 3 requirements for the federal government to own property other than through the spoils of war by treaty. And they are consent of the legislature, purchased, and needful buildings. So if the federal government's going to own property, let's say in a state, say, hey, Arizona, we need this plot of land. We're going to ask that we have this plot of land. And Arizona, if they're following the Constitution, is going to say, okay, we expect you to pay this amount. Then we will put that through our legislature for approval. And you better be putting some type of building on it, like a base or a fort or a stockyard or something like that. You can't just use it just to have the land. That is how it's supposed to be. How much property does the federal government own? It doesn't match any of that stuff.
Quite a bit. What are like a third of the United States on the West Coast from Colorado west?
River over.
Yeah.
And here's how they did it in most cases. Oh, Nevada, you want to be a state? No problem. You're going to let us keep this land, and that land, and then we might grant you statehood. Well, there was no purchase. There was no state legislature approving it. It wasn't for needful buildings. Unconstitutionally taken. Devil Dog says, what about national parks? Nothing constitutional about those either. If something needs to be protected, that's up to each state. That's an interesting thing to find out, isn't it? And it's funny when I get into this topic, people are stunned. But here's my final thing about that. In other words, Ammon Bundy was right.
Right.
Okay. Remember the Bundy Ranch stuff, right, everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Federal government owns 62% of the land in Alaska. No kidding, War Hamster.
One of my favorite bits of trivia.
And I bet most people don't know that it's more than half.
Yeah, and you got to realize that Alaska by itself is as big as I think it's half the United States. It's half of the CONUS.
That's
That
the reason
comes
why
out to-
Texas does not recognize the existence of Alaska.
Really? I didn't know that.
It's a
That's it.
joke.
Oh, duh, big.
See, Texas believes that everything's big in Texas. They're the biggest of everything.
Yeah.
So they don't recognize the existence of Alaska. Yes, they really do. But it's a joke. It's a Longhorn joke.
Gotcha.
That is 225 million acres that the U.S. government owns.
Devil Dog says North Dakota needs to take back Mount Rushmore. I thought that was South Dakota, Devil Dog. Matter of fact, I know for a fact it's South Dakota. Just saying. In fact, I'm supposed to be there on July 4th. I'm going to be one of the people that will be reading the Declaration of Independence at Mount Rushmore. And then after, when we're reading the names of all the signers, after each name, there will be a bell rung.
Very cool.
That's right. So I'm one of the people who are going to be reading the Declaration of Independence at Mount. Well, depends on whether or not they let us in. First of all, it might be outside of Mount Rushmore's. But the organizers are having me be one of the people reading it. So yes, I'll be in South Dakota on the 4th of July, Independence Day.
D-Dog, it's okay. Don't feel too terrible.
He says, "Sorry, you're right. Hey, that's what the Navy's for, man. Help you guys out." Now that said, I had to change the light bulb in my tail light not too long ago, and the guy at the auto store was a Marine, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna need to see the bulb. There's one of two possibilities. Can you pull it out?" He gives me a screwdriver. I pull out the whole piece, but I can't get the bulb out. It's stuck. He reaches over and he just pops it right out immediately. And I
Conservative.
and that's the difference between the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Conservative Cowboy is saying that if he's talking about Ruby Ridge, about it, that was a sovereign citizen movement issue.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
That's a part of what it was.
Right.
Yeah. How dare they be dissenters against the government?
Absolutely. I highly recommend that if anybody is ever if anybody's never even heard of it, and this is clearly a pro 2A group, I would highly recommend everybody get you can get the PDF for free about what the book is called, Unintended Consequences. Very good book.
Who's the author?
Let me find out. I remember the name.
You can't tell people the name of a book and not the author.
John Ross. John Ross.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you pointed that book out to me before.
Yeah, it's basically it starts off with like it's all true stuff, and it's fictional characters, and it's true history of gun legislation in the United States, and then all of a sudden it becomes a fictional story about the unintended consequences of the Americans who rise up and stand against the tyranny of federal agencies, in particular ATF.
See,
I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to give it away.
ATF.
Huh?
Yeah, you're talking about the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. That agency. Yeah. I've always told people. I've been telling them for years. That doesn't sound like an federal agency. It sounds like it should be a place I would like to shop.
Right.
A great convenience store. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I'm there. Give me the shop. I need a few shopping carts.
Mm-hmm. I'll just take a semi truck.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's continue. The final clause in Article 1, Section 8. And this one's a biggie. The left will call this the elastic clause because they like to stretch it in all directions. Look it up. If you look up elastic clause, it'll go straight to this. They also use this as the foundational idea behind their idea of implied powers, implied law, because they're saying that there are powers in the Constitution that are not in the Constitution. They're implied, and they use this as the basis of that. So we're going to talk about that. So Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers. So all the powers listed in the Constitution and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. So in other words, what it's saying is there are some things that are not in the Constitution that are going to be constitutional, not because they're implied, but because they're directly related to something that is expressly enumerated in the Constitution. And it is necessary and proper in order for those powers to be carried into execution. An example would be the establishing a post office. It says in Article 1, Section 8 that Congress has the authority to establish post offices. Okay, but to establish a post office, you need to purchase the land, you need to grade the land, you need to hire the construction crew to build the building. And in today's world, you need to buy the trucks and buy the machines that sorts the mail and all that. And there's no specific enumerated powers for any of those things in the Constitution, but they're necessary and proper in order to carry out establishing a post office, a expressly enumerated power. So necessary proper clause says that if something is necessary in order to carry out an expressly enumerated authority, then the federal government can do it. So now implied powers says, oh, well, then that means that the government can regulate the hell out of FedEx and UPS because, they carry mail like the post office. No, that's not what it's saying. It doesn't imply anything. Does regulating the hell out of those two companies, is that required in order to carry out the job of establishing a post office? No, then it's not a power. So the necessary proper clause, it has to be necessary and proper in order to carry out an enumerated power. If it's not, then it's still not allowed. This idea of implied powers is junk. It was created by Alexander Hamilton to convince Congress and George Washington to put forth the Bank of the United States Act, which went into play in 1791, 20-year charter of a centralized bank that basically was the forerunner of what today you lovingly call the Federal Reserve. And for 20 years, our economy suffered because of it. And what it did is it connected us to the European bankers. And the whole point of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, was for Congress to coin our money and regulate the value thereof, not for some bank to do it. We wanted to separate ourselves from that system and those bankers. That was the point. And yet, 4 years after the writing of the Constitution, 3 years after its ratification, and the same year, 2 years after it went into effect, we've already got a centralized bank. My, the powers of evil move quickly, don't they?
Very fast.
Very fast. All right. And so there you go. Article 1, Section 8. We will get in Article 1, Section 9 next week. And guess what we're going to start with? The citizenship clause. So earlier in the chat room, someone talked about the citizenship and 14th Amendment. Well, not citizenship clause. We're going to get into the importation of such persons, So in other words, it ties in a citizenship clause. Immigration, citizenship, naturalization, all of it's going to come together next week in Article 1, Section 9. I am going to start talking about the citizenship clause. Citizenship clause actually in Amendment 14. But I'm going to start talking about it because it ties into what we're going to talk about next week. Article 1, Section 9, importation of such persons into the state. What did the Founding Fathers do with that when it came to slavery also? So immigration, Atlantic slave trade, all of that next week. Okay.
Excellent.
Hey, Doug, there's a question
Yes.
there's a comment in the chat from Kikio, and I believe we were told earlier he's 15 years old, or he or she, I don't know if we got that. But the comment is, Doug, in my school, they teach us implied powers is in the Constitution.
Nope.
So can you oh, I know your answer. Can you give him like a one or two sentence rebuttal so he can take that with him?
The key words in the elastic clause that they use as the foundation of that is necessary and proper. If the authority is not, if the power is not necessary and proper to carry out an enumerated power, then it's not constitutional. Hence, that destroys the whole implied power argument. Necessary and proper are the key words there. So any implied power, is it necessary and proper in order to carry out? some other power. No, then it's not constitutional. Necessary and proper are the key words there. You can also say this: the person who created implied law did it through simply arguments, but the Constitution was never amended to say implied powers exist. And Madison later on argues that if implied powers exist, then what is the point of having a limited government? With implied powers, the government can imply anything at once, and it's not limited. United States Service Corporation. So Kikio, thank you, because I'm excited whenever there's someone younger than me anyway, learning the Constitution, but someone your age, that's huge, because guess what? You are the future. You are the one that's going to have to carry the torch after we are too old and tired to do so, and we wind up 6 feet underground.
Mm-hmm.
The torch, you're going to be the next torch bearer. We need you to understand this. So thank you for being here.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I'm always very excited when I see, the young people. Doug Warhamster actually shared with me a channel the other day. What was his name? What was his name?
It was the History Sci, and
no, it wasn't him. Hold on, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. It was.
We share a lot of channels.
I know, that's why it's.
Well, while they're figuring it out, tomorrow night here locally, I'm speaking to the Bonzo School Board at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. I'm not going to do a Wednesday night class in Temecula like I usually do, because they had a lawyer show up back on January 19th to scare the board and to scare the citizens. Well, gosh, if you don't follow these mandates, you're breaking the law.
John Doyle. Yes, thank you,
not
Sue.
A law.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, John Doyle. John Doyle is he's like 21 or 22 years old, and boy, am I impressed with that guy.
Yeah, he's fun. He's a fun watch on YouTube. What Doug just said cracked me up. A lawyer said that if you don't follow a mandate, you're breaking a law. So is he saying a mandate is a law now? Because that's a pretty easy argument. Yeah, well, that's pretty ridiculous.
A mandate can't be a law because it's not. A law has to be passed by
it has to be
a legislative body. Yeah.
Colt Browning indicated in the chat room is a fairly young guy, 29. He says, "Well, now that we've got Kikio in here, it means that he's not the youngest."
Nice. I didn't realize Colt was so young. I like it when I see young people. Anybody is in their 20s or younger, and they're interested in the Constitution. Boy, that just makes my heart sing.
At our Thursday night class in person, we've got an age range of pretty much about 18 to 95. Doug, would you say 95 is the high end?
I'd say it's a young crowd, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's younger, but we do well. We've got people of every age in that class. It's great, and but it's always nice to see the youth.
Yeah, we have a very active chat today. We only had 50 people right now, but we've had a very active chat. I enjoy when the chat is active. So
right. Well, I did notice too. There was another question. I didn't get to it. And I was gonna go back. It says that doesn't the it had something to do with the U.S. code on militias, if it would be unconstitutional. No, not necessarily. But as for age, Colt, you think you're usually the young person here in California? When I go to events and I speak, I'm usually the youngest guy in the room.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
And Doug is older than I am, and
not by a lot, but I am.
Not by a lot, but not much. But yeah, it's sad when we used to go to the things up here in Beaumont. It was like, I mean, the crowd. I applaud their patriotism, but man, the older crowd, they're just they don't, they're trying to do the right thing, which I absolutely applaud. But
They can only do
sometimes,
so much.
yeah.
And as
Their ideas are the ideas that they have for forwarding the movement don't really capture the attention of the young people. So that's why it's so important to have young people.
right.
Which is one of the reasons why, and I'll
Thank you,
say
Chris L. I'm 61. I've learned more from Doug than any of my teachers growing up. Thank you. I appreciate that. Great compliment. Thank you.
that's one of the reasons why I'll just call it Team 17 was so important. Team 17 was vital in helping wake up a vast majority of the younger population who were internet based.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't know what I mean by Team 17, um, I can't say it on air because this thing will get taken down super quick.
Colt, to answer your question, militias are separate from militaries. They're a different animal. The military and the militia are two different things. And a militia it belongs to the state, but has to be okay with Congress. And they still give the training and information, all that, but it's up to states to actually operate them. The militia can be called up either by the state or the federal government, but they belong to the state first. The military belongs to the federal government first. So there you go.
Yes, Colt, exactly.
And I tell you what, Colt, yeah, exactly. I see what you're looking at now. But I appreciate all of you. I got to go to San Juan Capistrano, and if I don't leave in the next 5 minutes, I will be late. So I better get going.
Thank you, Doug.
Tuesdays is one of those days where I'm like literally barely making everything because I'm just like, the moment I get out the door, I got to hurry up and all sort of stuff. And so I apologize that sometimes I'm here right in the nick of time. It's, between where my class is earlier, the traffic, and people wanting to talk to me. I actually had to tear myself away. I had a pastor that was talking to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, Pastor, I got to leave. And I still made it barely on time, but I do appreciate all of you, Kikio, especially, not that I want to put a young person above everybody else, but it's exciting when the younger folks are there because you are the future. And when we get back to the preamble, ourselves or posterity, capital P posterity, they signed that Constitution, capital P posterity, emphasis on posterity for you guys. Uh-oh, I screwed up my computer there. I'm so excited I was whacking my computer. But stop. That's not what I meant. The moment I said it, then he started laughing. I knew something went wrong.
All right. On that note, we're gonna call it a night. We're gonna call it a night.
I gotta go.
Thanks, everybody.
Love you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all you guys. Sincerely do. And just if you guys don't know, every Monday evening, Warhamster and I, along with Dan Radio Style and Alpha Warrior, we do Glitch in the Matrix, where we do about an hour and a half, where we really dive into some of the big topics and stuff. We're a little bit more footloose and fancy free because we're on Rumble. It's not here. So you can go to glitchinthematrix. Is it glitchinthematrix.us? I believe will take you right there. So we've got that, and then of course, obviously, untoldhistory.us and Warhamster and I are going to begin to do some videos on our own where where we will be able to delve into some of these topics that you guys like to talk about. So
we'll be doing the uncensored version.
Correct.
It'll never be on YouTube.
It'll be on Rumble, and we can actually talk about things. So
yeah, and I appreciate the fact that it's recorded and available later because I teach a class in Chino now on Monday nights. But love what you guys doing. And Devil Dog, no, the computer's not smiling. Stop. I love you guys.
All right, guys.
If thanks. We can't have a sense of humor among friends. Who can we have a sense of humor with? All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doug. Drive safe in the rain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going on Ortega Highway.
Oh man, I do not envy you right now.
All right,
I do not envy you. All right, guys. Thanks for everybody. We'll talk to you soon. See you next week.